Good afternoon, everybody. I see we have a few on. We're waiting just for a second. We've had a couple people call in and say their link is bad. So Senator Ellis, I see you're on. And I know the mayor is trying to get in right now. So just give us just a second and we'll start. Let's go ahead and begin. I just want to welcome everybody. My name is Brad Brooks. I'm the director for the City of Cheyenne Board of Public Utilities. And I just want to thank everybody that's on today. This started back a few months ago. I want to give some credit to Senator Affy Ellis for kind of reaching out through the mayor on some things that came up during legislature on just some questions regarding water. And Mayor Patrick Collins passed on to me Senator Ellis's request, and that wanted to know if these issues pertain to the city of Cheyenne. So when we looked at what they were, I had determined that they did not pertain to Cheyenne. But out of that came the request, and I had a conversation with Senator Ellis on the phone about the possibility of sometime in the future holding a kind of an overview or some type of a presentation that would kind of explain the city of Cheyenne's overall water process and our system, and then just what things that we're looking at in the future. And so I just want to thank Senator Ellis for reaching out and to us, and we're excited to do that at any time. If there's anything that ever comes up during the legislature or people have questions, I know they can always reach out to me by email or phone, but this gives us an opportunity to kind of give an overview. So I just want to thank you for that today, and hopefully this will be helpful for everybody. I'm going to present this presentation. What I would ask is that everybody, if you wouldn't mind, just kind of hold your questions till the end. And at the end, I have all of my department managers here with me, and we can open up to answer any specific questions that people may have. And so at the end, if you just use the raise your hand symbol on the Zoom meeting, we'll look for those, and then we'll open that up so you can ask your questions at the appropriate time. So with that, again, welcome, and let's go ahead and start. So first slide. A little bit about us. The City of Cheyenne Board of Public Utilities was established on April 27th, 1943. We serve approximately 75,000 customers in the Cheyenne, Laramie County area, combining of a variety of different users, residential, commercial, industrial, and wholesale users. We are made up of a 5 board member of directors. On that board is Mary Pope, is our board president. Yeah, Mary Guthrie, I don't know. Matt Pope is our secretary. Don't know why I put Matt and Mary together. So anyways, Mary Guthrie is our president, and Matt Pope is our secretary. We have Alan Cunningham, Keith Zabka, and John Edwards. So those are the 5 board members. We have 135 and a half dedicated water and wastewater professionals, and we have a really great team, a lot of sharp individuals, always kind of looking out and on the cutting edge of looking what things are going on in the industry and issues and conditions around the country that we have to deal with. Okay, here we go. Next slide. This is kind of just an overview that we put together here in-house that kind of shows an overview of our system. As you can see up in the upper left corner, we operate 8 dams and reservoirs west of Cheyenne. We have 4 groundwater fields west of Cheyenne that we pull groundwater. We'll go over these in a little more detail here in a minute. Those bring water in from the west into the city, and they come in first through our Sherrard Water Treatment Plant. And that's where the water is treated, chlorinated, and then sent out into the distribution system. Once it's sent out into the distribution there, you can see how it goes into the citizens of Cheyenne. And there's multiple uses we have. You can see off to the left side there, we have a lot of irrigation uses, outside uses that occur. And then also we have on the right there, the arrow that shows a lot of the domestic uses for our in-house uses. Of course, those in-house uses all discharge to our sanitary sewer system. And those flows then are collected in our collection system and go out to our two water reclamation facilities. That is the Crow Creek plant and the Dry Creek plant. And then one unique thing we have at the Crow Creek facility is we have the ability to treat our wastewater effluent to a higher level and meet what's considered through the state Class A recycled water. And that recycled water we pump out of the Crow Creek plant in the summer months into a pond at the Prairie View Golf Course, where we have a distribution pump station that pumps it to a variety of locations around the city. Cemeteries, ball fields, parks, the VA hospital facility is on, but a variety of facilities that we use the recycled water. And the plus about that is that that enables us to use that water in place of using potable water, which adds additional growth capacity for us in the future as our town grows. And so our goal is to grow that system more, and I'll get into that a little more in the system, but that's just a kind of a quick overview of how our system works. Next slide, please. This just starts out with our water. Like I said, we have 8 dams and reservoirs, 4 well fields. We have water right exchange, and the video I'm going to show in the next slide will explain all these, so I'm not going to go into detail. And then we have the only trans-basin diversion water collection system in the state of Wyoming. So we actually bring water over from the western side of the divide as transfer water that enables us to collect that water in Rob Roy and bring it to Cheyenne. And we have a video that we're going to show here that'll explain that real carefully. So let's go to the next slide. Let me change the sound here for everybody, and then we'll switch it.
The city of Cheyenne is home to more than 60,000 people. It is a city of commerce, full of life, art, education, and activities.
When we look beyond our city borders, we see Cheyenne is located in a high-altitude prairie, an area sandwiched between the Rocky Mountains and the Great Plains. We have wind, rolling hills, prairie, and sun. But one thing you won't see a lot of is water. Cheyenne receives only about 15 inches of precipitation per year. So where does the water come from that keeps Cheyenne green and growing?
The City of Cheyenne Board of Public Utilities provides the community with water, and there are many stages the water goes through before it reaches homes and businesses.
Our water system begins with snowfall, which is our main source of water. When the snow melts, spring runoff is guided through a series of collection systems, reservoirs, and wells located in southeastern Wyoming. Water is piped to Cheyenne from as far as 63 miles away. Cheyenne's first water system began from buckets of water pulled from Crow Creek and over the years has grown into an elaborate collection and exchange system. In the winter of 1867, the Union Pacific Railroad camped along Crow Creek. Crow Creek provided water for the railroad crews and became the first water source for the city of Cheyenne. At this time, flow in Crow Creek was seasonal, with flooding in the spring and trickles of water in the fall. In order to provide a more consistent water source, the city of Cheyenne constructed small reservoirs and infiltration galleries. The remnants of one of these reservoirs can still be seen near the Botanic Gardens. One of Cheyenne's first reservoirs was constructed in 1904. The appropriately named Granite Springs Dam is a masonry arch constructed with granite blocks pulled from the surrounding area. The reservoir is still in use today and collects water from Middle Crow Creek. It can hold 5,320 acre-feet of water. Following the construction of Granite Springs Reservoir, the city of Cheyenne constructed Crystal Reservoir, Work began in 1909. Crystal Reservoir also collects water from Middle Crow Creek and can hold 3,400 acre-feet of water.
Water from both Granite Springs and Crystal Reservoirs is piped to the Sherrard Water Treatment Plant, where it is prepared for delivery to homes and businesses.
Diversion structures on the creek water systems divert water released from the reservoirs to other locations so it can be piped onto Cheyenne.
Approximately 30% of the water used in Cheyenne comes from wells. The Board of Public Utilities maintains 4 well fields to the west and northwest of Cheyenne. These well fields consist of 35 active wells that go between 200 and 500 feet deep. They tap into the Ogallala and White River aquifers. Cheyenne has a right to 5,500 acre-feet of groundwater per year.
The City of Cheyenne established the Board of Public Utilities to manage water resources on April 27, 1943.
Their mission is to develop, manage, operate, and maintain Cheyenne's water and wastewater resources prudently and professionally to provide the greatest benefit for the community's investment. In the 1950s, Cheyenne's growth began to outpace the capabilities of local water resources. Since the North Platte River watershed was fully appropriated, meaning there wasn't any water available or unclaimed by other users, the Board of Public Utilities looked farther west for additional sources of water.
They found unappropriated water in the Little Snake River drainage, west of the Continental Divide in the Sierra Madre Mountains. The City of Cheyenne has the right to use this water. However, the presence of several mountain ranges make delivering the water to Cheyenne too costly. So how does Cheyenne benefit from this water when it is so far away? Coordinating with the Wyoming State Engineer, an exchange arrangement was developed and approved whereby the Board of Public Utilities can take water from a closer, more deliverable source, Douglas Creek. To make the swap work, the Board of Public Utilities collects water from the western slope of the Sierra Madre Mountains and transports that water under the Continental Divide through a tunnel to Hog Park Reservoir. Cheyenne uses the water stored in Hog Park Reservoir as trade water. When the Board of Public Utilities takes water out of the North Platte River system at Rob Roy Reservoir, they replace it with water from Hog Park Reservoir. Under ideal conditions, the Board of Public Utilities would take water out of the North Platte River system at Rob Roy Reservoir at exactly the same rate that it puts water into the North Platte River system from Hog Park Reservoir. This is seldom possible because the maximum amount of water that can flow down Hog Park Creek is limited for safety, erosion, and aquatic habitat reasons. So during the spring runoff, the Board of Public Utilities is unable to release enough water from Hog Park to match the high flow rates in Douglas Creek. This limits the amount of water that Cheyenne can collect. To overcome this limitation, the Board of Public Utilities contracts with the Bureau of Reclamation to store water in Seminole Reservoir throughout the year. During spring runoff, releases from Seminole and Hog Park match the high flow rates in Douglas Creek.
The Little Snake Douglas Creek system relies on timed releases and the cooperation of several organizations. When runoff is available, the system yields approximately 17,500 acre-feet of water per year. This water is delivered via gravity-fed pipeline to Granite and Crystal reservoirs, and then on to Cheyenne.
Much of the Little Snake Douglas Creek system were constructed in 2 efforts, termed Stage 1 and Stage 2 projects. The Board of Public Utilities constructed the Stage 1 projects from 1962 through 1966. Stage 1 consisted of 5 miles of collection pipes and structures in the Little Snake Drainage, the Hog Park Tunnel, Hog Park Reservoir, Rob Roy Reservoir, Lake Owens, and 50 miles of 26-inch pipe. Stage 2 was constructed during the 1980s and extended the Little Snake Drainage collection system by 12 miles, enlarged Hog Park and Rob Roy reservoirs, and added 63 miles of 30-inch delivery pipe from Rob Roy to Granite Reservoir. Both the Crow Creek and Little Snake Douglas Creek systems are heavily dependent on snowmelt for water. Without snow, there isn't any water to fill the reservoirs or to pipe to Cheyenne. In 2002, water users in Cheyenne consumed 18,000 acre-feet of water, while reservoirs only collected 3,450 acre-feet of water. Within the space of a year, Cheyenne's reservoirs dropped to 44.5% of capacity. While Cheyenne has excellent water resources, these resources are impacted by drought and overuse. When you turn on that sprinkler or faucet, remember where our water comes from and use only what you need.
Okay, I'm back. Hopefully everybody enjoyed that video. We always like to show that because it does give a good representation of how our overall system works. I would offer to both Senator Ellis and to the mayor, I know you're both on, if you would ever like a tour of that facility, we do try to do that in the summer months. And so just let me know, and when we have a group going over there, we can try to include you, because it is a great thing to kind of go out and see it on the ground. It really helps you kind of appreciate the depth and the complexity of the system. So we'd be glad to do that at any time if you'd like. So as we keep going, talking about just our water system, this is our Sherrard Water Treatment Plant. Basically, it was built in 2002. It's out west of town, about 5 miles on Happy Jack Road. It will treat 32 million gallons of drinking water per day. When we designed that, we also designed it so that it can be expanded, and we can take that up to 55 million gallons a day. So we do have the ability to do that at the appropriate time as needed. We are also did award a bid for our future hydroelectric generator. That will be located out at the plant. That will enable us to use the pressure of the water. There's about 250 PSI pressure at the plant that comes down through the pipeline from Crystal Reservoir. And we're able to use that pressure to power a turbine generator that will help us with electricity on the plant, and then also be able to feed some back into the distribution system with Black Hills. And so we are just starting that project, and we'll be having a groundbreaking ceremony here shortly. We have over about 740 miles of water mains within our distribution, our collection system out into the mountains. We operate approximately almost 3,300 fire hydrants, and you will have noticed just recently we've been out flushing a lot of those the last couple months, and we do that every year to help with water quality, as well as just to check the operation of those hydrants to make sure they're operating properly. We also operate and maintain, there's over 11,000 valves in our system. And those valves help us anywhere from controlling, some are pressure controlling type valves. Others are isolation valves. So when we have main breaks, we can shut certain portions of the town off. And so there's a lot of valves in the system. Total assets, just so you kind of understand how much this stuff costs. This was prior to our depreciation in fiscal year 20. We had about almost $434 million worth of capital assets in the ground and above ground, which made up our water system. So you can tell there's a lot of dollars invested over the years. And so it's a pretty elaborate system. Let's go on to the sewer, I think is next. So on our sewer side, this is what we call our sewer collection system, and then out to our water reclamation facilities. We have over 337 miles of sewer collection mains, and those are the mains that would be out in the streets in front of your residences, businesses throughout town that actually collect our sewage flows and then transport those out to one of our 2 water reclamation facilities, whether that be Crow Creek or Dry Creek. And an easy way to kind of think about that is anything that kind of drains in the Crow Creek drainage down through, the downtown area, those flows in Swan Ranch area out west of town all go to our Crow Creek plant. And anything on the north side of town that typically drains into the Dry Creek drainage goes out to our Dry Creek plant, which is out further east of town. We have 14 miles of the recycled water pipe, and that is our reuse system that I explained earlier that comes out of the Crow Creek plant. We have what we call 4 sewer jet trucks, and that's the picture you see there, that truck. Those trucks are running Monday through Friday. We always have crews going out, whether they're cleaning lines, a variety of things that truck does for us. Whether if we have sewer backups or calls, they can go and clean those lines. And so they are continually running and manned by a 2-person team. We have also a camera van that we try to do around 10 miles per year. And that's where we can actually send a robotic camera down in our sewer lines. And we can actually check those and inspect those for condition. And maybe if there has been a backup, we can go look and see what has caused those backups, whether it's grease, rags, things people have put in the systems, or possibly a bigger one now, even for us today, is a lot of roots get in from the trees, will seek into the sewers and then basically cause blockages. We have also 8 lift stations. So we are very blessed here in Cheyenne that we do have elevation change in our town. A majority of our system is able to flow by gravity, but there are some areas on the perimeters of town and certain places in town where we actually have to lift that sewage through a lift station, and it's a facility. We have 8 of them across town in order for that to flow by gravity in existing mains. And so those are facilities that we have to operate and maintain as well. The picture on the far bottom right is actually the construction of our newest lift station, which is out by our Crow Creek plant, but that's the lift station that serves the southern sewer main that we just built here 4 or 5 years ago. But that's the one that will serve all of the new development that's going in south of town. So you can see the size of that gentleman there. It's a pretty elaborate facility that's underground, but that's that facility. Okay, next slide, please. These are our 2 water reclamation facilities. The plant that you see on the left there is our Dry Creek water reclamation facility. It was built in 1974, and it has had upgrades in 2006. It treats about 10.5 million gallons per day, and it does produce, and we'll talk about it a little later, but Class A biosolids, and that is something that in the future we're probably going to incorporate more in the process of our business and look at that as a possible revenue source for us in selling those biosolids. The Crow Creek plant is shown on the right. That's our oldest and original plant. In fact, I've been told, I think that was the first wastewater treatment plant in the state of Wyoming. So it was built in 1947. It had upgrades in 2004. And then it treats 6.5 million gallons per day. And that is where we also produce our Class A recycled water for irrigation that I've talked about. Next slide, please. Just thought I'd go over some of the funding mechanisms that we look at as a board. And there's a few more I'll add to this, but basically we got three types that we look at. You can look at the local, where we kind of pay as we go. We use user rates and added fees. So, that's typically the board money, and we do a lot with what we get in rates, and we can actually finance a lot of those projects. We do charge system development fees on every new tap that comes into our city. And that's a one-time fee that kind of is their buy-in fee for all this infrastructure that they are taking access of. And so it's a one-time fee. Every lot in town has paid it. And so those fees we can use, but we can only use those fees for projects that have to do with enlargement of our system. So maybe a new transmission main or enlargement of the water treatment plant, water reclamation plant. More storage. So those are the only types of things that those fees can be used for. They can't be used for just rehabs or everyday maintenance and operation of our facilities. Then we also have tap fees. Those are fees that are paid every time somebody taps our mains. We do have cash reserves, debt and loans. And then another option is municipal bonds. From the state level, we typically will go out on the water side to the Wyoming Water Development Commission for grants. They have a 67% grant and then a 33% match that the client has to match. And so what we typically do on those is if we have a large project, we'll go out for the 67% grant from the Wyoming Water Development Commission. And then typically the other 33% will go down on the federal level to the SLIB board and get either a clean water or a drinking water loan to make up that additional 33%. The clean water is basically for wastewater or sewer projects, and the drinking water funds are typically just as that for potable or our water system. I will tell you those funding mechanisms have been super, super valuable to us over the years for Cheyenne. There is many projects and many of the facilities that you're seeing that you just saw here on some of these overviews that we as an organization would have never been able to construct if it wasn't for those funds. So we're very appreciative of that. At the same time, we do watch where the state is with revenue and funding in the future. And we know that those funds have been looked at, and we know that we may not be able to guarantee those in the future. So we are always looking for new funding opportunities. But to date, those have been super, super valuable to us. And both the SLIB group and the water development group up at WWC have been just super, super to work with. Very, very helpful on making a lot of these projects successful. So we really respect and appreciate those working relationships. There's a couple other that we are kind of watching too right now. Actually, EPA has what's called the WIFIA funding, which is the Water Infrastructure Finance and Innovation Act funds. And those are some monies that are out there for larger type projects. And so I am actually signed up in August to do a webinar or watch a webinar on that, because those funds are starting to become more and more available and popular for water and sewer projects. So that is something else we'll be looking at through EPA. The other is just some of the American, the recovery funds that they're putting out right now. And I know that the city, and I've talked with Mayor Collins, the city is going to be getting some of those funds. And we're hoping that, depending upon what's available, that we may be able to use some of those funds as well for some water and sewer specific projects. So next slide, Clint. Kind of looking ahead, keep going. These are just some things that we are kind of always monitoring, looking at, but these are some of the things we kind of look at that are risks to our infrastructure. Always deferred maintenance. So we are continually, as you can see, we had, approximately 1,000 miles of pipe underground. We have constantly, each and every year, look at doing rehabs to replace and upgrade those facilities. We have a lot of infrastructure that's under the ground. Nobody sees it. As long as you turn your faucet on and the water comes out, and you open your sink and it goes down the drain, or flush your toilet, it goes down the drain, there's no issues. But there is a lot of facilities underground that keep that operating day in, day out. So we are always very conscious of trying not to defer any maintenance, because all those pipes, valves, fittings, everything have a life. And a lot of times it's more normal we're pushing those to the end of their life than replacing them when they need to be. And so we have also started a pretty elaborate asset management program at the board, where we are tracking and monitoring the age and use of a lot of our facilities and getting them on a reoccurring, whether it be maintenance or replacement schedule. Another is just security threats up there on the right. I think everybody's pretty aware, and if you watch the news, you know of a lot of the things going on around the country that have occurred even this year, and attacks on municipal water and sewer systems is something that's pretty popular. And so We have a fantastic IT team here at the board as well as at the city. And, we always think we're pretty safe, but we always try to put protection mechanisms in place to protect our systems, because if somebody was to get in and attack any of our SCADA systems with control of a lot of our plants, there could be big issues. So that's something we look at very seriously each and every year. Natural disasters and natural hazards and disasters you see down there in the bottom left corner. That's actually a picture this last year from the fire over at Rob Roy. The Mullen Fire. I just went blank on the name. Thank you, Clint. But the Mullen Fire, that's a really spectacular photo early on with the fire as it was moving east towards Rob Roy Reservoir. So, we are continually seeing things in our drainages from the environment, but those type of disasters can have huge impacts on our water systems and our infrastructure. Fortunately, in this fire, I think we're going to be okay. We did lose some infrastructure on just some of our cathodic protection, which protects our pipeline. That was above grade. Some of that got burnt. We did have some drainages that were impacted, but we're able to shut those off so we don't get any runoff into our pipelines. But time will tell. We did lose also some communications to Rob Roy. To date, we still are not able to control those reservoirs by our communication system because they were all burnt down. So we're manually having to send people in to make those changes as needed. So the other is just, again, aging infrastructure, and that kind of goes back into the deferred maintenance. But again, we are continually looking and monitoring, and that's where our asset management program that we've put together in-house, our own GIS staff and a lot of our management team, and then staff at all of our facilities have done a lot of work to start putting that together so that we can start addressing our infrastructure needs. And then limited funding, just as I discussed earlier about the funding options. We're always aware of that, and we know that funding in the future and money in today's society is becoming harder and harder sometimes to find. And so we're always looking at opportunities and partnering with people to help fund some of our projects. Okay, next. Regulations, just some things on regulatory things that we always have to be aware of. These are just a few. I'm not going to go into any major detail, but just federal land designations and some of the requirements that comes along with that. We do have facilities that are on federal lands, and with that, there's a lot of additional conditions that we have to do. For example, we have a pretty elaborate permit that allows us to operate our water system over in the Hog Park, Rob Roy area that we have to maintain every year and working with the U.S. Forest Service. Just always water rights, compacts, decrees, senior versus junior water rights. We're going to talk about that a little later. Some of that pertains even to our water rights, and then some of the stuff that's going on in the Colorado River. There's always competition for scarce land and water. I mean, we actually have a consultant on board right now that's an attorney, water rights attorney, that is actually helping us in Cheyenne look for the possibility of obtaining additional water rights, whether it's here in the Crow Creek drainage or over in the North Platte drainage, to help us with our water rights in the case that we do have a curtailment and we have to make up some water. Water quality, again, is always changing at the federal and state level. Just the requirements and standards. They're always being evaluated. Our stream standards, different water quality parameters that we're needing to test for. And with that, I mean, some of those require additional facilities or treatment processes when those come down from the federal level. that require us to spend some serious amount of money on our facilities so that we can meet those new higher standards. And then just, there's always a lot of things with, you may hear of the pharmaceuticals that will get in, that can get in our water supply systems or that can get in our wastewater system. And then, some of those are discharged or they require additional treatment to remove some of those. And then just new contaminants. There's, always new contaminants out there. The latest, and I won't go into it now, but are the PFAS and the PFAS. You'll probably hear more about those, but we have even encountered some of those in Cheyenne already. And so that is something that we'll be looking at that could have impacts on our water and sewer systems. Okay, next slide, please. Demand for water. These are just some things that we are always monitoring and looking at. As everybody's aware, there's a lot, and it's an exciting time to be in Cheyenne. I regularly have discussions with our staff that has had discussions with other organizations in town, whether that be the mayor's office, the city, Cheyenne Leads. Many things are, many people are looking at coming to Cheyenne. There's a lot of opportunity and business opportunities here. And so with that, we're always looking and considering, increases and extensions to our service area and the topography here. What because of our elevation changes or the topography of where they want to build, what kind of implications are those going to, how is that going to affect us on what's going to be needed to put in infrastructure to serve those new, whether it's residences or businesses. Again, the population and economic growth. Again, if all that happens of what we hear is going to happen here in the next few years, I think there's going to be a lot of population and economic growth here in Cheyenne. And so our desire is always to be very proactive at the board and try to stay ahead of that growth so that we're ready to serve when called upon. And then the other is magnitude and type of commercial and industrial activity. We get a lot of requests for companies that want to come into town, but there's a fine balance that we always have to play of what type of facilities wanting to come in, what their water needs are, what their sewer demands may be. And then kind of comparing that with, how many jobs is it going to bring in? How is it going to affect our community? And so we fortunately have a really good working relationship between the city and the mayor's office, Cheyenne Leads. We sit down regularly with Leads and look at businesses that are coming in, and we have to make those tough decisions. Are these businesses that fit the kind of growth we want in Cheyenne and our ability to serve them? So it's something that we always have to look at with every business that wants to come in. Watershed changes there over on the bottom. That's always never ending with some of the environmental things that we have to deal with. The watershed change, the big one right now that you'll hear more about is just things that are going on the Colorado River. Lake Mead and Lake Powell right now are about 150 feet low, both of those. And so they are only expecting about a 40-some% runoff this season. And so there's going to be still definite shortages. And with that, a lot of the lower and upper basin states, as part of the Colorado Compact, are going to have to make some tough decisions on drought mitigation or curtailment and what that looks like. And so, as I shared earlier, with our water over on the western slope in the Little Hog Park area, that runoff and that water ultimately end up in the Colorado River. They go through the Yampa River into the Green River, which ultimately goes into the Colorado. So we are affected by that if in fact there is curtailment on the Colorado River. I will share, just recently, I shared this with the mayor this morning. I did get invited by the governor to serve on the work group that he is forming for the Colorado River issues. And so I think that's a great thing because we as Cheyenne will have a seat at the table in being able to help represent the interest of municipalities for Wyoming. So we're excited about that, and so we will be a part of that. So, okay, next slide, Clint. Then just some of the environmental changes that we always are having to deal with. Change in water chemistry. There can always be things that get into our water supply system. I will say it's pretty safe to say we are very fortunate to live where we live and pull our water from where we get our water from, because we are really the first users. And so, you know, it's not to say there isn't things that could be introduced into our water collection system, but we always are watching and monitoring continually of changes in our water chemistry to make sure that there's no impacts or issues with our water quality. Climate is another. Everybody's aware of just climate changes and things that we're seeing. That relates back to the Colorado River issue, relates back even to our fire issues, you know, with a lot of the beetle kill that's occurred over the state with the climate changes. So there's a lot to that. But climate is something else that we pay close attention to, and calculating and seeing what our future runoff and snowpacks are going to be annually. Just changes in our ecosystem there, and that's just one showing. That's the same Mullen fire. It's actually a picture that was early on once it started out of the helicopter that went and kind of did reconnaissance to see the impacts of where the fire had started. And then groundwater recharge is in the bottom corner there. As was mentioned earlier, you know, we have several wells out west of town. Groundwater recharge is something that we continually monitor and watch on our control systems, and we can tell the level of all of our wells, what they're doing, if they're recovering, you know, after you know, heavy use. And so groundwater recharge is very important. And that basically occurs from the runoff and the snowpack and the rain that actually percolates down through the ground into our groundwater fields. So that's something that we monitor and are aware of very closely. So solutions, we got all these things that we're dealing with. We just thought we'd share some of the things that we're kind of doing to be proactive to stay ahead of these. And so back here 2 years ago, we actually, through the Water Development Commission, we did a reservoir expansion study. And that study looked at the possibility at the time that we thought was maybe we would enlarge crystal and granite reservoirs out west of town, or look for other places to possibly develop some additional reservoir storage, since we have additional water rights that we could bring over. Out of that plan, it kind of basically came up with some conclusions that right away, storage is probably not our major need. Before we'd probably want to do a storage project, there was some more low-hanging fruit. And some of those items are, we determined that our raw water that comes off of our North Crow Creek system, we needed to have the ability to get that to our Sherrard plant. Typically right now we use that as raw water and bring that into town. And that's what serves our parks up at Lions Park. And we actually have a raw water irrigation system that feeds the golf courses, the base, and the country club over there and the parks. But with the impacts of needing good potable water in the future, we wanted to have the ability to bring that North Crow water to the Sherrard water treatment plant and treat it for drinking water instead of raw water. And so in the future, we will more than likely extend our recycled water system up into that area. And so we can free up that raw water to be used for potable uses. So that's one thing that we're in the process of doing that project. The other is bringing over, this was kind of a thing that our staff actually had determined we could do, but we did not have the ability to bring our federal well field, which is north of town, into our Sherrard plant. And with the creativity of a certain few individuals here in our organization, we were able to just install a valve and we're able to get that water over to the Sherrard plant. So just another thing that we're doing to try to maximize all of our water resources and able to use those as a possible potable supply. And then the last was we are going to, we have in this budget year to do what we call our crystal bypass line. And what that line would do is that would be a line that would be built around Crystal Reservoir from our stage 1, stage 2 lines that would enable us to bring water over and not have to put it in crystal and granite, but be able to go directly to the plant. And the benefit to this is in the future, we are probably going to have to do some work on our dams at both crystal and granite. And if we did not have the ability to bypass those, we'd have to take those completely down. And so this will enable us to be able to still supply water to town and work on those facilities. The other thing it does is if we were ever to have a fire or contamination issue in those reservoirs, we do not have the ability to bypass those from water over at Rob Roy and being able to get that to our plant. And so we have been looking at this project for several years, but it is something this next year we are going to go to the Water Development Commission to see if we can obtain funding to do that project. And it just kind of really builds in some redundancy in our water supply system that right now, under certain conditions, if we were to have a certain situation, we may limit the amount of water that we could bring over. So it's just providing additional redundancy into our system. The next is you see increased water treatment capacity. As I mentioned earlier, we can expand that plant up to 55 million gallons a day. The other things that we are looking at is we did a study that was our filter re-rate study, and we did that in-house. Our staff did that, and basically it was the ability to see if we could increase the loading rate on our filters in our filter plant, thus enabling us to treat more water without really having to do any improvements. And so currently our filters are rated at 4.5 gallons per minute per square foot. And we looked at taking those up to 6 gallons per minute per square foot. That study is still being completed. We are seeing that there is a potential for increases, but we were seeing that if we do that, we are more than likely going to have to add another flock sed basin to help out with some of our turbidity issues that occur when we start increasing flows in the plant. But we are looking at things at the plant that we can do. Blending study there, you'll see surface groundwater. This is another thing that we hired a consultant, but in the past, our ratio for groundwater versus surface water has always been 70% surface water, 30% groundwater. And the reason we do that is just to maintain a proper water quality in our distribution system so it does not create corrosion issues. Everybody's familiar and probably heard about a lot of the lead and copper rule changes that are coming down from EPA. This is part of that. And so we are looking at what our blend can be that will enable us to maybe decrease the amount of groundwater that we have to blend in. And that's why we do blend the groundwater to help out. Thus, that would save the amount of groundwater we could use, and we don't have to run that system as hard. The results of that came back that we can actually go up to a 95.15, 95.5, excuse me, yeah, 95.5 blend. And so right now we are slowly increasing that, and we are up to 80-20 right now. So that's a very positive thing for us because that enables us to rest and not use our groundwater system as much, thus allowing that system to kind of replenish itself. So that has been a great benefit for us as well. Next slide, Clint. Just other things that we have. So we also have a water conservation program, and on that. That is something that we started back in 2002 after the drought that was mentioned. And that project has just been vital to what we do in the city. We have actually seen that with the implementations of our summer watering schedules, our tiered rates that basically charge people more if they use more water, hopefully encouraging people to conserve water. We've actually seen growth of the city go up and actually seen the per capita use per household actually go down. So that is a very positive thing and something that we will continue to move forward with in the future. Cloud seeding you see there in the middle, that is something, Senator Ellis, you're probably familiar with this. I know a lot of this comes down through legislature and funding for the Water Development Commission, but we are a partner in that project. And we put forth about $50,000 a year as a partner with the Water Development Commission for the cloud seeding that they do over in the Sierra Madre and the Medicine Bow mountain ranges. And so that is cloud seeding that is done to help improve the snowpack so that hopefully, we have seen that it has helped in the past years, our snowpack over in those areas where we can collect more runoff during the runoff season. So we basically look at it as another tool in our toolbox. Cloud seeding has been very, very beneficial. So it's another exciting new kind of science that has really taken off to help improve with snowpack throughout the year. And then our reuse water expansion, as I mentioned earlier, that is something that we're going to be incorporating, trying to bring that over to the west side of town and take off some of those areas that are right now currently using raw water that we can actually direct to the plant and help supply with additional growth. Other things that we're working on, the raw water operations. So 2 areas here. One of the things out of the study for the enlargement study of the reservoirs also came that we can maybe try to really dial in our collection system over in the Little Snake area. And so we're looking at ways that we can make that system more efficient by how we operate our gates. Currently, we have always operated those at about half opening, and we're looking at maybe raising those to 60, 70%, enabling us to get over more water. We found that if we open them up all the way, we have some issues in some areas with pipe capacities. And so we're just trying to dial that in to see if there's some efficiencies we can make on that system to help us collect and get more water to Cheyenne. Groundwater development, again, is something we're always looking at. Currently, right now, we have what's called an electromagnetic survey project that we're actually doing with a consultant, where they are flying all of our well fields and with a electromagnetic survey, and they can actually use radar, penetrating radar that will actually map the subsurface aquifers and soil conditions below the ground. And so it's pretty high tech, very, very interesting. We're going to hopefully do some more this year, and then we'll have all of our well fields mapped, which will enable us to better select where we want to drill wells, where water pockets are, and even maybe where areas that we may want to supplement water to help out with aquifer recharge. So that's something that we're full bore on in developing that groundwater resource that we have. Wastewater treatment capacities, just always looking at areas, facilities, things, needs that we have there. We are doing some stuff right now with our dewatering and our drying processes at the Dry Creek plant. And so that will help us as we process our waste sludge that comes out of those. which will also help the one on the far right there is just upgrading our marketability for our biosolids. So the biosolids are a fantastic soil amendment that a lot of people could use. And so we're trying to hone in that technology and get those to a point where we can market those in the future and sell that as possible revenue for the board. And then the last one there is new water rights. As I mentioned, we have a consultant on board right now that is out actually, as we speak, looking at some possibilities for us and options of maybe what new water rights are out there or options, whether it's, actually purchase rights, or do we dry lease property where, we lease property from ranchers, and in the year we need it, we actually pull that water and use it, and then he gives that water up. So there's a lot of options that we're looking at. There's some other storage options on the North Platte that we're researching, and so that's just something that's continual. But we did hire somebody this last year to help us out with that, specifically looking at what possibilities may come down from curtailment on the Colorado River. Next slide, that may be it. So I think that's it. Questions. So I've got some people here, staff, they're watching. If you have some questions or comments, if you'd raise your hand, and then we'll unmute you, and hopefully we can address any questions, comments you may have.
Hi, this is Affy.
I think you're clear if you want to ask your question.
Thank you so much. Well, first of all, just let me say thank you for putting together all this information. I think I've got a much better handle on Cheyenne's water situation, and just really appreciate the follow-up from your office to put this together. A couple questions. I know that we talk a lot about growth coming to Cheyenne. And so you mentioned that, you talk to leads and some other entities about, businesses that make sense for Cheyenne. I'm kind of curious to know if there's a list of businesses that don't make sense that really would threaten our water supply and water sources. So that's my first question. And then on the second one is dealing with purchasing new water rights. I'm curious to know who you hired as your consultant. And along those lines, I've been doing some research into our agricultural land exemption. I'm sure you're aware that lands that are classified as ag are exempt or taxed at a much lower level than residential, commercial, industrial. And so, I don't know if that's a barrier where you might have a landowner who, is advancing in ages, has a duty to put their water to beneficial use, but they don't want to let go of the ranch, so to speak, because they don't want to lose their ag exemption status if they're not producing, or their water right. And so I'm wondering if there's something along the taxation lines that we should be thinking about that might be helpful to address some of those water rights issues, if that's going to be a big focus of providing new sources of water for Cheyenne going into the future, and just kind of what you're hoping to get when you're looking at purchasing or leasing water rights.
Okay, great questions. Thank you. Let me see if I can get them all answered. So the first one is, I think you'd asked what kind of businesses, I'm getting feedback. What kind of businesses get, or would we look at that may not be a great match for Cheyenne? I guess I would share, a lot of them have to do on water use and volume of use. For example, I know there's been a few that have come in recently or in the last year or two where they've needed demands as much as 5 million gallons of water per day. And so when we're looking at, Cheyenne, its capacity, growth potential, we have to really sit down and look at, okay, if we're going to release 5 million gallons per day, that correlates to so many residences. And so we have to really kind of do a check and balance on, is that the type of business that we want to focus on? Compare, and maybe they only offer, 40 or 100 jobs in the community, or do we want to look at a business that, has far less water consumption, but yet may bring, hundreds of employees. And so it's kind of just a fine line on some discussions we've set down with leads. I have shared this with Mayor Collins, a couple times that, those are some things that we have to kind of consider and look at, because once we commit to these businesses, that water is gone. And you can see, to go buy water rights, it's pretty expensive. I know down the Front Range, it can be as high as $30-some thousand per acre foot. So that's how I would kind of address that question. I will maybe open it up because I have some people. Frank is our engineering and water resource manager. Frank, would you add anything to that of just discussions that we've had recently?
Yeah, the other discussion we've had in our cooperation with leads is also they look at it from the perspective of how many jobs it brings in and what kind of paying positions they are, to try to balance that between the need for water for continued growth of, with the construction of homes, and yet having jobs in the community for our residents.
Clint, would you like to?
This is Effie again. Maybe a follow-up and maybe
If I
be
may,
more
we
specific.
have about 7 million gallons per day of capacity currently in our system without having to go out and get more. So if we have a large business that comes in and consumes a majority of that, that also limits us from future opportunities as well that may come. So we're wanting to balance out our make sure we have the right fit for Cheyenne.
And then on to your question too, I think related to our water
Brad,
rights.
before we leave this,
And who we
before we leave
hired.
that topic.
So as a board, we actually sat down and came up with a list of some water right people in our community, and did interviewed, I think, 4 or 5 different individuals. And the person that we selected was Keith Buron. Keith Buron is a water rights attorney. He's been in this area quite a while. Keith actually used to work for the state engineer's office. And then Keith is also holds an assistant seat on the Colorado River compact issues for the state of Wyoming. So he knows that system, has followed it for years, and so really has a lot of input and the ability to give us some really wise counsel on what's going to happen on the Colorado River. I do know that we met with him here about a week ago, and he is going to possibly reach out to some other individuals. One of those, I'll just share it, Pat Terrell, who used to be the former state engineer. He works with Keith a lot, and he may assist us as well. But we've asked to see if he would be interested to come on our team. So that's who we've selected. And then the last item I think you asked was on what we're looking at when we go after water rights. That's really where we're going to rely on Keith and his expertise, because we don't do this every day. And I know there's a lot of options out there, whether you go try to, like you said, buy up a ranch or a facility of people that have water rights on the plat, or you try to do some type of a lease. That's something we're going to rely on his expertise. I do know that a lot of times, though, you have to look at when you go and convert water from ag use over to domestic use, or what Cheyenne would need. Typically, it's a half. So if you get half of what maybe their beneficial use was for ag, and if you bring that over for municipal use. And so there's a lot of things that we have to look at. And so we're just early on in starting those discussions, but we've kind of asked Keith to reach out and kind of put some feelers out. He's not really sharing, who's looking for the water, but just seeing with other people that he knows in the industry, if there's an interest out there of some possible water rights or options, things we can look at. So I don't know, did that answer your question, Senator Ellis?
Just to follow up on evaluation, I understand, jobs and how much consumption a certain industry requires or demands. I guess it's more, to be more blunt, the state, we've, as a state have been very supportive of things like oil and gas, which, there's a water demand with that industry. But you can see where the revenue comes from our state. It is through those tax revenues from produced minerals. So I didn't know if there was a sentiment among your entity and others when it comes to oil and gas development in Laramie County.
We have not really had in the past oil and gas come to us for water. We have some rates that have been established by our rate study, but what we have seen, we'd love to sell them water if they have a need. What we've seen is typically they can find that water for lesser dollar amounts, whether it's per acre foot, well, they charge per barrel. But basically they've been able to find that with either local ranchers, or sometimes they've used ranchers' wells or their appropriations off of streams. They've used that in place of coming to us. So I think it's been very minimal of some of the oil and gas exploration of water that we've sold. So we've not really turned down or had discussions. None of these discussions that I was referring to related to oil and gas businesses at all.
And just to follow up to that, can you hear me?
You bet. Yep.
Well, so I guess I'm just looking for some consistency because, in recent years, the legislature has been trying to invest more in, diversifying our economy. And a lot of that's centered on, how can we encourage things like blockchain and technology, just kind of, things that Wyoming hasn't traditionally been known for. And so I guess my concern is that somehow the state is encouraging business or development of a sector that maybe stretches Cheyenne in particular's water resources too thin. So that's where I'm just wanting to make sure I understand those industries that give you guys a little bit of concern.
Sure. I can open it up. Can you guys think of any, and I'm talking to my team here, you guys think of any areas that we see them? I can tell you one thing, they are big users. It's pretty evident we are becoming the computer. What were you saying, Clint?
Data centers.
Oh yeah, for the data centers, there's of course Microsoft, and they've built their one out west. They're building another one on the east side of town, and they're going to have another one on the south side of town. They do use a lot of water. But I will tell you that they are also very open in discussing with us. I think they do bring in a lot of good paying jobs as well, but they are also very open to us about looking at possibilities. And we're encouraging them in the future with a lot of their facilities to look at recycling that water, because they have the ability, most of their water use is, of course, for cooling purposes. And so if we can get them or work with them to recycle that and use that water 2 or 3 times before they need to put another draw on our system, they are very, very open to those green type of ideas and able to, in working with us. So, that is one area that I think that's probably the biggest one. Would you agree, Frank, that we've seen that have been big water users that have come in, and I think we're starting to get a reputation for that because of our climate and just our region. It's the perfect spot for data centers, and so I think we're probably going to see more of those. Could we come to a point where we say, hey, we can't handle any more? We could get there. We don't see that in the near immediate future, but they are probably the industry that we've seen the biggest increase of water use in the Cheyenne area. Anything else you guys would want to add to that? I can't think of any other major one.
No, I can't.
Yeah. Any other questions you'd have, Senator Ellis? Hopefully we addressed your.
Yes, that's helpful. The last one, I just have heard some discussion or maybe read something in the paper a while back about military, just some activity occurring on military lands, maybe affecting water quality. If anyone
Well,
kind of knows what I'm talking about or wants to touch on that, I've
Yeah.
been hearing that more and more from my constituents. And so I wanted to make sure I hear it from the horse's mouth, what you know and what's being done to just make sure we're protecting water quality and from activity occurring on the military base.
The only thing I think I would share on that, and I can open it up if Mayor Collins is on as well, but I do know that, we have shared about the PFAS, PFAS, and I know that they've found some contamination in Crow Creek that has affected the Crow Creek Rehabilitation Project. And I don't know that they've proved anything, but I think the suspicion is that may have come from the base. And so I think the base is aware of it. I think they have plans to work on that, but that is the only area I am aware of. I do know that we did have all of our, who came to us? DEQ? Yeah. The state DEQ came to us and asked, because PFAS, PFAS issues are starting to show up in communities, if they could test our well field on the south portion of town that is affected by the missile site out on the Belvoir Ranch. We did let them analyze all of our wells and was fortunate to say it came back that they did not detect any PFAS or PFAS in any of our drinking water wells, which is a great thing. So Senator Ellis, that is the only item I am aware of. And I don't know I think is Mayor Collins, if he's still on, if he wanted to add anything.
Hey, Brad, this is Patrick. You're right, the PFAS is definitely an issue. I know the base has done some sampling downstream on some wells and they've come up clean. So we know there is some contamination and the base is aware of it. And the only other one I'm familiar with right now is the TCE on the Belvoir that came from the old Atlas sites back in the day that we all know about. But I think those are really two water quality issues that I'm aware of at this time.
Thank you, Mayor. And I can add a little bit on the TCE. So the Corps, Army Corps of Engineers has done a tremendous amount of work on that plume out there that's on the base, on the Belvoir Ranch from the old Atlas 4 missile site out west of town. They are starting to do on-site remediation. And they have also taken care of the city's concerns in that they have an airstripping unit that they have installed, they built, and they actually operate and pay for all the operation of that out at the Sherrard Water Treatment Plant. So any of our groundwater that comes off the Belvoir Ranch and the Bory well field that has TCE contamination, it is completely removed, 100%. And so that was a requirement that we placed upon them. And when that all got started, I have to give credit, Senator Barrasso really, really helped us out with getting a lot of that done. And so that is in place and set for future. And they are continuing now to actually start remediation on site out at the missile site to take care of that TCE plume. Any other questions? Did we answer your questions?
Hey, Brad.
I'm
Yes.
good, thank you.
I just want to tell Senator Ellis, thank you so much. During the legislative session, she reached out to me and I passed her on to you about questions that were coming up in the legislature concerning water. And I just really appreciate her looking out for Cheyenne's interest and Laramie County's interest. I know that's her area, but there's a lot of other folks who are also in the legislature. She's the only one that really did reach out. And I just want to say thank you so much for thinking of us and making sure we're taken care of.
I'd echo those thank yous. I appreciate that as well in the discussions, Senator Ellis, that we've had. And again, the offer is always out there. If there is any time you got questions water related, I'd be glad to meet with you, with me and my staff particularly. And if there's any portion of our system you would like to go see, I would be glad to set that up for you and other legislators at any time. Just reach out to me and I'd be glad to offer and do that.
Senator, I just did a tour of the water treatment plant and the wastewater treatment plants. It's a 3 or 4 hour tour, but it's absolutely worth it if you want to see what should be something that looks really complicated. These guys make look easy, but it was definitely a worthwhile trip.
Well, if you put another event like that together, certainly let me know. And if my schedule allows, I'll certainly be there. And if other legislators are on this Zoom and want to set that up, I'm happy to keep working and make that happen. So we appreciate it.
I just wanted to thank everybody again for their time. Again, I would just offer, if there's any time you need anything, reach out. Our contact information is on the screen, but we would be glad to assist in any way we can. We love what we do here at the Board of Public Utilities, and it's our goal to continue to provide the best drinking water and wastewater services for the community of Cheyenne. And so we just thank you for all your interest and support today and appreciate spending the last hour and a half with us just to hear about our system. And if there's anything we can do in the future, just please reach out to us. Thank you, everybody. Have a great day.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you.